Well, it's a big weekend of action in England's top two tiers, albeit that both fixture lists are a little depleted due to FA Cup quarter-final action. But today, we're focusing on matchday 38 of the Championship season as the running really hots up. We've got two of the top four in action, we've got 10 games overall, and there's going to be a lot of drama, I'm pretty sure of that. As always, we're going to run through all of the weekend's games, give our preview, our score predictions, and our reasons why. And of course, I'll encourage you to do exactly the same in the comments below. And if you beat or match my score overall, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be after the international break in a couple of weeks. For now though, before we go ahead to matchday 38, we've got two recaps to look back on. Firstly, last weekend for matchday 37, where it was a little bit of a frustrating one for me. A 2-0 win for Leeds United got me a perfect score, perfect start on Friday night, but only 5 further points after just missing out on some perfect scores. The Norwich one particularly frustrating as they got a 5th goal when I'd gone for a 4-0. But 8 points for me overall. And in terms of the league table, I just miss out on a Championship playoff place because 6 of you beat me, but it was a very close match day overall. Nobody got more than 11 points, but 4 of you just pipped me with 9. Chris, Peter, Brian and Lewis, 4 of the regulars. Chris with 1 perfect score, all the rest of you with 2. Well done to the 4 of you for taking the playoff places. In second, Steve is back in form, 10 points and just 1 perfect score. Very good effort to get that many outcomes. At top of the pile, Adam with 11. You surge into form this weekend with 2 perfect scores and you take top spot with 11 points overall in matchday 37. A quick recap of midweek as well. We had a one-off special for Birmingham City versus Middlesbrough. I went for a draw, which thanks to a Riley McGree scream-up was completely wrong. But 4 of you went for a Middlesbrough win. Nobody got the perfect score, but Daniel, Steve, Teo and Ojo all got 1 point, so well done to you. Now we move ahead to the weekend's action, and 10 games begin on Saturday because the Friday night game, the big one we were all looking forward to, has been called off due to the FA Cup. So that Southampton-Leicester game could be quite big near the end of the year. For now though, we start matchday 38 with a big Welsh derby on the Saturday lunchtime. It is Swansea City versus Cardiff City, and this one's going to be pretty interesting, isn't it? Swansea unfortunately defeated at Bristol City after a few decent results in a row, done by a Rob Dickie goal, and to be fair, while they dominated possession, they created nothing in the game. No shots on target, didn't really have anything clear-cut. And it was probably a bit more of the Luke Williams, Russell Martin style from the Swansea years recently, but a really disappointing display. It was a very poor game in truth. The Swansea City came out second best, and keeping the ball's great, but you've got to create something clear-cut. For Cardiff, on the other side of that, 4 wins in a row, and this one, both bonkers and surprising, because in the 94th minute, Cardiff were trailing 1-0 at home to Ipswich in what had been a pretty poor game, actually. Ipswich had managed it fairly well up to that point, but Cardiff had a threat. But in stoppage time, I don't really know what happened on the Ipswich side, but you've got to say fair play to Cardiff. They took advantage with an equaliser in the 95th and a winner in the 100th minute. And it's a big 3 points, which, whisper it quietly, gets Cardiff back in the playoff mix. Just 5 points away now with a few games to go. And a bit like Middlesbrough after midweek, definitely back in the hunt. So fair play to Cardiff, they're picking up results, and it was actually a pretty decent performance against the top side. Not many have been able to nullify Ipswich in recent weeks. So it makes this game difficult to predict, and I'm a little bit torn because Swansea in the last few years had always won this game, but then Cardiff obviously turned the screw in the reverse fixture at the start of this season under Errol Balut. Before that, Swansea had won 4 in a row. I don't know what to go for. It's going to be a complete clash of styles. Swansea will have the ball. Cardiff will play for set pieces. They'll be a bit more direct. I think I'm going to go with the general recent history of this fixture. I know Cardiff won the reverse one. It's genuinely one of the hardest to call this weekend. I'm going to go for Swansea to nick it and win at home by 2-1. As we move on to a big game at 3 p.m. at the bottom, Birmingham City just 1 point clear of the relegation zone against Tom Cleverley's Watford, the interim manager taking over after Valerian Ismail was sacked after last weekend's defeat to Coventry. That continued a very poor run for the visitors in this game, and of course after going 1-0 up were pegged back pretty well. Was actually a pretty good Watford performance, which made it all the more frustrating for them. I say that as a Luton fan, being fair as well. They had the best chance of the match. They had a lot more of the ball and a lot more of the opportunities, but just so many poor goals they're giving away defensively at the minute, and they're not taking their chances. It's a horrible combination. Another side in that form of Birmingham, who a crushing 1-0 defeat away at Millwall last weekend in the 90th minute, then done by a screamer from Riley McGree early on against Middlesbrough in midweek. No shots on target, no real attacking threat. And without Tony Mowbray in the dugout, it just seems to be sliding a little bit here. I mean, this game is a very strong candidate to be 0-0. We don't know what reaction Tom Cleverley's going to get. He's never been a manager, and this is going to be very difficult to call. I just think when we've seen games like this in recent weeks, particularly for Birmingham, I go back just over a month ago now where they got that big 1-0 at home to Blackburn, and I'm going to go for the same score here. I just feel that it's a crucial game at home against a side that hasn't got the biggest attacking threat. We don't know what reaction we're going to get from them, but I'm going to go for Birmingham 1-0. I think it's going to be an awful game, but I think the host might nick it. Next up, a game that is crucial at both ends of the table. 3rd v 23rd. It is Ipswich Town versus Sheffield Wednesday. Ipswich, as we mentioned earlier, no idea what happened in stoppage time against Cardiff. It wasn't their best performance. They weren't brilliant. But defensively, in stoppage time, they just collapsed against Cardiff. And in the end, a really crucial defeat. Given that Leicester got a point, Leeds won again. Southampton's game obviously off. They could have put real distance there between 4th place and almost turned it into a 3-horse race or put big pressure on Southampton. And now, after finding that form, that big late win against Bristol City, just sucked a little bit of the momentum away. For Sheffield Wednesday, they were actually done by another of the top sides in Leeds, and we got the score right for that game. And as we mentioned, it's just the way it is at the minute. Sheffield Wednesday are very competitive against most sides in the division, which is a great testament to Danny Roll and what he's done. But Leeds were just too good. Too experienced, too ruthless in front of goal with Bamford and with Nonso scoring. And they were the better side, there's no doubt in it. But Wednesday have got a threat. They've been very strong this season since Danny Roll came in and got settled down. Ike Ugbo is obviously a massive threat. But against the very top sides, they've still struggled, with Leeds and Leicester in particular. So I'm going to go for Ipswich to win this one, to bounce back at home. Ipswich always score goals for fun at home. It's very rarely less than 2 or 3. So I'm going to go for Ipswich to win this one by 3-1. As we move on to a side that have got themselves back in the playoff race over the last week. 3 wins in a row for Middlesbrough, who host Blackburn Rovers in a big game at both ends of the table. Blackburn now just 3 points clear of the relegation zone after 4 1-all draws in their last 5 games. That does include the draw against Newcastle after 90 minutes. But even the game before that, they drew 0-0 at Cardiff. You would think a draw would be a safe bet here, but Middlesbrough are finding form again. Both strikers scoring 2 games in a row. And then Riley McGree, a man who was so important last season, popping up with a magical moment away at Birmingham. It's not been vintage from Middlesbrough, but they're getting themselves back in a race. And to be just 5 points away now, you have to say Michael Carrick's done well, given the injuries and the players that were lost last summer. For Blackburn, they just need to find a win, and I don't see it coming here, to be honest. You would be very, very sensible to predict a 1-1 draw, but all 4 of those 1-1s were at home. When they went to Swansea, they lost. Middlesbrough doing well. I'm going to go for Borough to win by 2-0 and plunge Blackburn back into a bit more trouble. As we move on to another game, actually, that's very similar in the battle for the playoffs and the relegation battle. It is Plymouth Argyle versus Preston North End. Plymouth, 3 points ahead of the relegation zone, just goal difference ahead of Blackburn, and Preston level with Middlesbrough on 53, just 5 off the playoffs. For Preston, they just did what Preston do. They put in a bit of a dud of a performance against Stoke City. They were really poor. We mention this a lot. They never dominate games. They never create bundles of chances. So you're reliant on your attacking players being clinical every single week. He had 4 shots in the whole game against Stoke. Only managed 2 on target. 1 great chance. Of course, they got a goal. But Stoke City were the better team and deserved to win it. They carried more of a threat, got in behind out wide, won a lot more set pieces, and in the end were able to take advantage. For me, Preston will just miss out because they've not got enough consistent quality going forward. And you can't always battle against the odds every single week. So a really disappointing day for them. For Plymouth, an important point away at Blackburn after a couple of defeats, but the goal threat has really dried up since Ian Foster has come in. And while Morgan Whittaker was there to save the day again, against 10 men for over half an hour, Obviously, it took them a while to get level again. They dominated the ball. They had loads of chances, but they didn't create a huge number of clear-cut openings. There were a lot of shots from distance. There were a lot of set pieces that weren't great. It was a very difficult day for Plymouth, and you feel like maybe it was a missed opportunity. This game, though, are home to a Preston side that have not won in their last two, only won 1 in 4. Have at times been better away from home. You look at the Coventry game and the Cardiff ones, they're better defensively on the road in recent weeks. Plymouth have struggled to score at home, but their last few games have been against the likes of Ipswich, West Brom and Leeds, all top sides in the division. I know I feel like I do this every week with Preston, but I'm going to go for an ugly 1-0. I'm going to go for Preston to nick it, to stay in the playoff race and win by 1-0 at Plymouth Argyle. As we move on to a game between two of the bottom three, but only one of them really is still in the fight. It is Rotherham United versus Huddersfield Town. And Rotherham, well, another 5-0 defeat. 2 in a row away at Coventry and Norwich. And while Norwich scored a couple of great goals, I say what I said last time. Rotherham looked like they've given up. No shot on target. Only 2 shots in the whole game. Didn't really show any attacking intent. And to be that open whilst being defensive and disciplined was really worrying. I'm a little bit concerned about the way they're going down, which is something they haven't normally done before. But I say that, Huddersfield very similar in the second half against West Brom. It was all going pretty swimmingly at half time. They were pressing well. They were looking really good. They were nicking the ball high up the pitch, but they ran out of steam doing it towards the end. And West Brom, towards the end of the game, were able to start picking them off on the counter, winning set pieces, but also just having a consistent threat out wide. Let's be fair here as well. Huddersfield had a couple of great chances. If you go on the clear-cut chances, it would have been a 2-2 draw, but there was a very clear difference between the first and second, and maybe that's partly West Brom stepping on the gas, having a bit of a hairdryer from Carlos Corberán. But it was clear to see that what the manager wanted to do for Huddersfield, the players couldn't quite do for 90 minutes. So a bit of a difficult day for them, but this they have to target as a massive game. If they win it, they'll almost certainly go back out the relegation zone by the end of the day. And I think they will, but I think Rotherham will target this as one of the few games they can maybe go and have a real go. And I think on the counter they'll have a threat. So I'm going to go for a surprise close thriller here. And I'm going to go for Huddersfield to win at Rotherham by 3-2 in the end. As we move on to yet another game that is big in both the relegation and the top 6 battle, it is Stoke City versus Norwich City. If you take away the game where Norwich had that sending off, a 1-0 up against Borough, they've been pretty formidable, pretty high scoring and pretty defensively solid in recent weeks, for the last month in fact. Whereas for Stoke now, it's 2 wins in 3, some really decent performances, and Schumacher's right, they are starting to turn the style and dominate a few more games. They were really solid away at Preston. It was a good performance, and on another day they might have scored more. But this is against a side that is going to be rampant. Josh Sargent, one of the best strikers in the division by a mile. Sarah's in form as well. They were scoring some great goals, Norwich, at the weekend. This game, I'm not really sure what to expect, because I think Stoke will try and control the game and nullify Norwich a bit. If they open up and allow Norwich through, Norwich will beat them comfortably. I don't think they'll do that, and as a result, I'm going to play a little bit safe here. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. They're 2 sides that are among the lowest for number of draws this season, with 7 and 8 respectively. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. The Championship's favourite scoreline, I had to get it in somewhere. And this was the game, maybe other than the Welsh Derby, that I probably thought it was most likely. 2 more games on a Saturday, starting with Sunderland versus QPR. A missed opportunity for QPR at home to Middlesbrough. A 2-0 defeat after 2 second-half goals. And while QPR didn't have a bundle of chances in the match, they did have 2 or 3 good ones in the first half. A couple of saves from Seny Dieng, and then one where they went round a keeper, and it was a great tackle by the defender. But QPR probably should have got themselves ahead before Middlesbrough had the chance. And it's been a story of QPR's season, hasn't it? Missed opportunities going forward, and then poor goals conceded at the back. So not really surprising, but it keeps them right in the thick of the relegation battle. But there isn't a better side to be playing at the moment, because Sunderland have lost 6 in a row, and while Joe Bellingham scored a great goal at Southampton, and they did show a little bit of fight from 2 down in the second half, they're just all over the place at the minute. I mean, we all said going back that it was a stupid decision to sack Mowbray, but I don't think many of us thought it would fall off this bad. And now, with the Michael Beale effect, it's no real surprise, is it? He left QPR and they fell away for a year. He left Sunderland and they've fallen away as well. There seems to be a common denominator here. Yes, the last 3 games have been against Norwich, Leicester and Southampton, 3 of the informed teams in the division. But prior to that, they were losing against relegation battlers too, which for me makes this really hard to predict. It could have been a Michael Beale derby if he'd held on for a few more weeks, but not to be. Do you know what? I've got a real feeling Sunderland are going to end the drought. It has to end at some point, doesn't it? If QPR are at their best, they'll probably win this game, but I still worry about them taking chances. They very rarely keep a clean sheet as well, just one in that run of the last 6 games. So I'm going to go for Sunderland to nick it, home to QPR by 2 goals to 1. As we move on to the final game on Saturday, which is West Bromwich Albion versus Bristol City. Bristol City nicked a terrible game against Swansea on a Sunday. It really was a poor game of football. 2 shots on target between the 2 teams, but to be fair, Bristol City did what Liam Manning doesn't always like to do. They gave up possession, they let Swansea have the ball, and they nicked a goal and 3 points, which quite frankly, at this stage of the season, they were drifting towards that bottom 3. It is important to restore the 9-point gap. So they're not going to complain. It's a good result. However, they're coming up against a West Brom side that were rampant in a second half against Huddersfield. Yes, Huddersfield's style played into their hands a bit as they started to run out of steam, but Mikey Johnston is having an absolute field day. And West Brom are just doing what Carlos Corberán teams do. They're picking up wins, they're picking up points on the road. And to be fair, their home form, bar the Southampton game in recent weeks, has been pretty solid. So after beating Coventry at the Hawthorns, after a big away win at Huddersfield, after getting that point at QPR, albeit due to Kit Price's great save, I'm going to go for West Brom to win again. You have to predict that for this one. Bristol City, yes, have ended the streak. They're the hardest team to predict in the Championship. But I'm going to go for West Brom to win. I was going to go 2-1, but I've done that a couple of times. So I'm going to go by 2 goals to 0. And the final game is a massive opportunity on Sunday afternoon because Leeds United host Millwall. And this game has a lot riding on it because Southampton and Leicester were due to be playing each other. It is off because of the FA Cup participation for Leicester. Ipswich are home to Sheffield Wednesday, a game you'd expect them to win. If Leeds win this game by 2 goals, they'll be top of the division come the end of the weekend, albeit with a game more played, but that will be a massive moment. And Daniel Farke is normally very good at timing his runs at the title. I predicted them to win the league pre-season. I got a lot of stick when Leicester went 10, 11, 12 points clear, but I'm starting to believe it myself now. Millwall, though, will not be easy opposition. They have done it time and time again since Neil Harris came in. 4 games unbeaten, a 90th minute winner against Birmingham City. A better performance in terms of creating chances, but so far they've just been so disciplined at the back. And basically this game is going to be a battle. Can Leeds break Millwall down? We've seen a few games at home earlier in the season where Leeds have played these sides and they've really struggled to do that. And they've ended up with frustrating 0-0, 1-1 draws. We saw Sheffield Wednesday at home right near the start of the season, a 0-0. But then I look a couple of weeks ago at the Stoke 1-0. They seem to be finding a way at the moment, just producing one bit of magic. I would not be shocked if this is a 0-0 because it's exactly what Millwall are going for. I wouldn't be shocked if Leeds gave away a silly set piece and drew 1-1. But I'm going to play safe. I'm going to go for Leeds to win it. I just don't see this being a big one. Let me say it now. If they win this game really handsomely, it's going to be a huge statement of intent, particularly given Millwall's recent results, especially away at Southampton. But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a tense day. I'm going to bank on a moment of magic. I'm going to go for Leeds United 1, Millwall 0. Probably not the best game to watch on TV, if my prediction's right. With that out the way though, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for with this weekend's action. I've gone for both Ipswich and Leeds to win to keep the pressure on the 2 sides not in action this weekend. Of course, they both know that one of them will drop points in the reorganised fixture between the other 2 teams in the top 4. I've gone for a big win for Huddersfield away at Rotherham, as well as victories at home for Swansea and Birmingham City in that relegation mix. There's going to be some huge results this weekend in the battle for the playoffs, relegation and the top 2. But what do you think the scores will be? Do you agree or disagree with my predictions? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you give me yours for Matchday 38 too. If you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be after the international break. There's also Premier League predictions coming tomorrow. Hopefully, Luton Bournemouth will go pretty well tonight. Fingers crossed. You can find that preview up in the eye above. We've also got plenty to come from League One this weekend, as well as a little bit of action from non-league day next week. So keep your eyes peeled and subscribe to stay up to date with all of that. If you enjoyed this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Thank you for watching along as always, and I'll see you back here tomorrow afternoon as we look ahead to Luton Town versus Nottingham Forest, a huge game in a depleted Premier League weekend schedule.